War is everywhere these days. Military conflicts across borders, civil unrest tearing societies apart, political battles dividing nations, violence and upheaval surround us. The drumbeats of combat, persecution, and civil strife echo globally. It's hard not to feel overwhelmed and powerless against so much turmoil. The constant news cycle brings haunting images of destruction, leaving little room for peace or control. No matter where you live, the tendrils of conflict can reach you. An active war zone nearby. Violence erupts across the world. Your own community turns on itself through ideological battles. Chaos and darkness feel inescapable, but this video series will guide you through it all. We'll explore the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. This timeless wisdom helped warrior sages like Marcus Aurelius find inner strength as the world crumbled around them. We invite you to join this journey. Share your own perspectives in the comments. Stay until the end for more than just knowledge. This path allows profound self-reflection and transformation. By learning Stoic principles like resilience, courage, and self-mastery, we'll become resistant to conflicts, toxic forces, military or civil, nearby or distant. No violence can shake someone who masters this emotional indomitability. You'll emerge with an unbreakable human spirit, able to disarm the darkest societal chaos and rise victorious from the ashes. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Control your thoughts and actions. Never make the mistake of believing you are powerless. No matter what happens, you still have control over your thoughts and actions, the most formidable weapons at your disposal. This is perhaps the most foundational teaching of Stoicism, and where we must start our journey. Because in the midst of war, oppression, and chaos, it's all too easy to feel like a helpless victim of circumstance, to succumb to the belief that we are powerless in the face of forces bigger than ourselves. But the Stoics knew this was a self-defeating lie. While we may not control external events and the behavior of others, we always remain in control of something much more powerful. Our inner selves, our mindset, our response, our intentional actions in alignment with our values. You see, when everything around you is crumbling, your thoughts and choices are the only things truly yours. They cannot be stripped away or destroyed by any outside force. And by maintaining control of your mind and ethical will, you deny others power over you. You remain unbroken, even if the world itself breaks apart. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled as an emperor during the Antonine Plague and Marcomannic Wars, had to grapple with devastation on an unimaginable scale. Yet in his seminal work, Meditations, he wrote with determined self-possession, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." In other words, we may not control external upheaval, but we get to decide our inner response to it. We have the power to aim our formidable mind at our circumstances like a laser, burning away terror and panic to reveal the reasonable perspective within our grasp. So as the first step on our path, let's reclaim our self-determination. We alone own our mind. This is the most priceless truth. No army, oppressor, or darkness can overpower the sovereignty of our intentional thoughts and choices. That level of control is always available when we have the courage to seize it. Remember, your thoughts and actions are not just within your control. The Stoics considered them the most formidable weapons you possess, because how you choose to think and act is what determines whether outside events diminish you or reveal your own innate power. Will you crumble at chaos's feet, or use this as an opportunity to fortify your highest self? The path to becoming emotionally indomitable starts right here, by taking full control of your inner life, one potent thought and disciplined choice at a time. Lesson 2, develop self-knowledge. A man's life is what his thoughts make of it, Marcus Aurelius reminds us. Stoicism advocates self-knowledge as the path to achieving true happiness by separating facts from our expectations. You see, in the chaos of war and turmoil, it's easy for our minds to run wild with catastrophic thoughts and limiting beliefs. We expect the worst, assume the sky is falling, and get emotionally hijacked by our own insecurities and fears. But the ancient Stoics knew that clearing away that mental clutter, separating realistic facts from irrational stories we tell ourselves, is key to maintaining equanimity. They urged a practice of deep self-understanding to discern where our anguish truly comes from. As Marcus Aurelius put it, things themselves don't hurt or get reviled. It's the views we take of things that do. In other words, Pain comes not from the event itself, but from the judgments we layer on top of it in our own minds. Imagine two soldiers on the battlefield. One gets wounded, but views it as a badge of honor, an opportunity to demonstrate resilience. The other sees the same injury as the end of the world, catastrophizing until their mind spirals into panic and despair. Same event, totally different experience, all depending on their level of self-awareness and ability to reframe limiting perspectives. This is why the road to Stoic mastery begins with turning our gaze inward and asking some tough questions. What beliefs am I clinging to that no longer serve me? How am I judging this situation through a distorted lens? Where are my expectations out of alignment with reality? With deep introspection, we can shine a light on the thoughts and gut reactions that turn small obstacles into titanic struggles. And we empower ourselves to pivot into a more rational, steadied perspective that alleviates our suffering. Because the more we understand ourselves and view the world through an unclouded lens, the more we recognize that so much of our strife is self-created. We're haunted, not by circumstances themselves, but by ghosts of our own making. By developing profound self-knowledge, we exorcise those self-limiting phantoms, free ourselves from the prison of our fearful minds, and reclaim our sovereignty from the inner and outer forces that wish to make us unbidden slaves. Only then can we experience the enlightened sense of apatheia, a state of undisturbed rational lucidity that the Stoics considered the highest virtue and key to thriving through even the darkest nights of the human soul. Lesson 3. Accept what you cannot change. While the world wages war around us, the Stoics encourage us to accept what lies beyond our control. As Epictetus states, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. Now I know what you might be thinking. How can I possibly accept the unacceptable horrors of war, death, and human cruelty? How can the Stoics be at peace with such darkness and depravity? But understand, the Stoics aren't telling us to welcome misery with open arms or view atrocities as good. They're urging us to make a critical distinction between what is within our control and what is outside of it. The general realities of geopolitics, battles being fought, regimes rising and falling, these are external events largely outside any one person's sphere of influence. But our internal response, how we choose to think, feel, and act in relation to these events, that is 100% ours to control. The Stoics saw so much human suffering stemming from our refusal to accept this reality. We spend enormous energy railing against, bemoaning, and fighting that which we cannot change, rather than focusing that effort on diligently shaping what is within our power. Imagine a soldier stubbornly shaking their fist at the smoke-filled battlefield, screaming at the chaos to stop, to revert to the peace they crave. This changes nothing except raising their blood pressure. A Stoic soldier takes a deeper breath and accepts the reality of war, so they can turn their concentration to responding with maximum wisdom and courage. By relinquishing our desperate need to control the uncontrollable, we reclaim our agency and redirect it more productively. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." We cannot halt the churning cycles of the cosmos, but we can decide our response and thus our lived experience of it. The Stoics don't ask us to be doormats swept up in the winds of fate. They call us to be radical and free, unmoored from the pains we cannot change, so that we might throw our full effort into mastering what is ours to shape. Acceptance of what we cannot control, combined with disciplined effort within our own sphere of influence, this is the path to Stoic masterful living. Even when the world descends into chaos, it protects our inner peace while focusing our efforts productively. Tranquility awaits those who have the courage to walk this path. Lesson 4. Cultivate humility and valor. Moderation, humility, valor, the makings of someone indomitable. In times of turmoil, the Stoics knew that the humble yet courageous soul remains unbroken. You see, when the earth shakes and skies burn, it's easy to be consumed by the ego's insatiable need for control, importance, and vigilant self-preservation at all costs. We can become arrogant in our fear, lashing out in desperation to protect a fragile sense of self. But the Stoics understood that true strength comes from the opposite direction, a release of the ego, a wider perspective that transcends our small self-obsessions. As Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to have freed one's self from fears." to have mastered one's cravings, in short, to have put oneself outside the power of external sources. Humility means recognizing there is no peaceful eye within the storm itself, that we are but temporary vessels in an unfurling cosmic tapestry, at the mercy of forces far grander than our individual desires. It's the wisdom to avoid arrogantly overestimating our own control, yet this humble release isn't a call for resigned inaction. Quite the opposite. With our perspective reoriented, we're freed to choose valor over selfishness, courage over cowardice. You see, humility without valor is merely weakness, but infused with an animating bravery of spirit, humility becomes an awe-inspiring force, an unbending oak that can weather any hurricane with resilience and grace. This is the Stoic master at their peak, grounded in the humble acceptance of what they cannot control, yet potently focused and heroically resolved to give their very all within their sphere of influence. When valor guides our steps, we don't flee from adversity, but lean into it. We don't idly await rescue, but become our own reinforcements. As Marcus Aurelius declared, the universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. And when valor arises from a foundation of humble wisdom, our actions are steadied, released from the distortions of ego, fear, and desperation. We can respond with grace under pressure, so embrace the power of this potent amalgam. Cultivate a perspective that banishes arrogance, yet summons a warrior's determined spirit. Discern what is outside your control with humility and mastery, what is within your power with valor. In this combination, you will find the makings of someone truly indomitable, a person whose poise and energy can cut through any darkness and restore order from chaos. Lesson 5. Practice moderation. The Stoics preached a balanced, minimalist lifestyle. As Seneca reminds us, how does lamenting our problems help us? Stoicism teaches moderation, even in our suffering. In the throes of war and calamity, it's easy to get swept up in the swirling currents of excess, reckless emotion, catastrophic thinking, self-indulgent despair. We convince ourselves that outrageous displays of anger, fear, or victimization are warranted given the circumstances. But the Stoics knew that not only do these extreme pendulum swings fail to improve our lot, they actually make it vastly harder to cope. Unbridled emotional reactivity clouds our judgment and saps our energy for productive resilience. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. You see, when we get hooked on venting, complaining, or wallowing in emotional drama, we relinquish that power over our inner life. We foolishly spend the very energy and focus we should be investing in plotting a wise course through the chaos. The Stoics don't ask us to be robots devoid of feeling. They recognize our human capacity for emotion as the richness of the experience. But they call us to maintain mastery over those emotions, to let them course through, but not sweep us away into unproductive extremes. Imagine the steadied captain riding out a violent storm, temporarily allowing himself to feel the threat, contemplating his response, but never overcorrecting into panic or pessimism that could ground his ship. This is moderation in action. The untrained mind always overshoots the mark, gets battered about by out-of-control emotionality. But the Stoic, metaphorically, takes the rudder through disciplined moderation, acknowledging the feelings but never losing plot of the long journey. By avoiding useless indulgences like despair and outrage while cultivating what Seneca deemed a universally acceptable temperance, we preserve our strength. And in doing so, we muster our full faculties to bend circumstance to our philosophic will. Like water-cutting canyons from stone, judicious moderation doesn't magically solve our crises, but its gentle, persistent currents carry us to higher ground where the view is clearer and our potential amplified. It sculpts us into the sort of indelible, resilient human sculpture the Stoics knew we could become. Lesson 6. Be disciplined. Each disciplined act is like the strike of a hammer on glowing steel. An unbreakable mind is being forged. A disciplined life cultivates a serene mind amid chaos. When the world descends into warfare and mayhem, it can feel like we're being forged in fire without our consent. The searing trials thrust upon us threaten to warp and misshape our character in unbearable ways. But what if, like a master blacksmith, we could take back control of that fiery process? What if we could temper and strengthen our own mental and spiritual steel through intentional discipline? This is the revolutionary promise the Stoics offer. While we may not control the external chaos, We can sculpt our ability to withstand and even transform it through the practice of rigorous self-discipline. You see, the undisciplined mind is like a rock tossed about by stormy waves, easily battered, driven by every tempestuous shift in circumstance. But a disciplined mind is more like a lighthouse, rooted, resolute, shining luminous guidance through gale-force trials. As Epictetus put it, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. Peace amid turmoil requires diligently training our perceptions and responses. Through studied discipline of our thoughts, actions, habits, and reactions, we reclaim our sovereignty. We take the rudder of life back from our impulses and condition ourselves to meet each fresh difficulty as an opportunity to forge our highest excellence. This intentional discipline separates those who are at the mercy of external events and those who mold them into advantages. While chaos reigns outside, the disciplined Stoic remains steadfast, responding fluidly to each new shift through their practiced poise and mastery. So when the storms of life inevitably arrive, have we honed the mental and spiritual weapons required to navigate them with grace? Or will we be unarmed, reactively flailing against fate's implacable currents? Let's seize the moment to train as the Stoics did. Through relentless self-watch and disciplined thought routines, we can craft an indomitable inner citadel, impervious to external disorder. Our power then flows from unshakable tranquility, not circumstances. From this vantage, any adversity transforms into another opportunity to strengthen the supple resilience and tempered wisdom that comes from lives of rigorous discipline, to forge ourselves into people of honor, effectiveness, and impact, even when the fires burn hottest. Lesson 7. Find the light in darkness. There is a light somewhere in the darkness, for each hardship contains the opportunity for something good to arise. Your task is to discover this light and nurture it, transforming your challenges into triumphs. When the world appears to be crumbling into atrocity and anarchy, it's understandable to feel engulfed by an existential darkness. The numbing fog of despair and uncertainty can blind us to any flicker of hope or potential progress. But the Stoics urge us, implore us to reject this bleak nihilism. They insist that even in the most dismal of circumstances, there remains an inextinguishable light, shining undimmed opportunity in every struggle we face. As Seneca proclaimed, misfortune is virtue's opportunity. The Stoics saw adversity not as a curse to be combated, but as raw material out of which heroic strength and character could be forged. Think of how tempered steel emerges from the hottest fires, or a diamond's radiant facets are revealed only through sustained pressure. The darkness of difficulty does not have to obscure our vision. It can bestow the gifts of resilience, courage, wisdom, and grit if we have eyes to perceive them. The true Stoic sage retains an unshakable optimism, not a naive Pollyanna refusal to acknowledge harsh realities, but an eternal faith in the human spirit's capacity to wrench light from any abyss through the determined pursuit of virtue and truth. When surrounded by war's atrocities, they look for opportunities to practice justice, restraint, and compassion. When encircled by bad actors, they seek openings to model integrity and good character as powerful counterforces. Each tragedy becomes a solemn call to cultivate the fortitude and love that can triumph over darkness. This eternal quest to alchemize adversity into advantage is more than just a mindset or discipline. It's the core of what it means to live as a Stoic, to beat one's breast defiantly against fate's chaos and proclaim, "Here I stand, an unconquerable force for good, scraping wisdom from the coals of this crisis." So as the storms of history rage around us, we must resolutely adopt the Stoics' unquenchable determination to find the light, nurture its radiance, and allow it to blaze forth with blinding truth and purpose into the longest night. Only those who stay vigilantly hopeful can become beacons of heroic, transcendent virtue in a conflict-torn world. Will you commit to being one of these indispensable firelighters? Lesson 8. Seek greatness of soul. The Stoics urge us, do not lust after fame and fortune, seek greatness of soul. When we focus on developing our character, we become impervious to external forces trying to manipulate us. You see, in the chaos of war and social upheaval, it's tempting to get seduced by hollow pursuits of status, wealth, or power. We imagine these things will finally make us feel significant, secure, and in control amidst the swirling anarchy. But the Stoics knew this path only leads to a prison of insatiable neediness. As long as we depend on external circumstances to grant us worth and well-being, we remain at their fickle mercy. Our happiness is held hostage to chaos. True freedom, they taught, can only be found by loosening our attachments to the ephemeral and reclaiming our sense of dignity and self-respect through the ongoing work of cultivating our character. This journey of striving toward arete, the ancient Greek ideal of virtue and excellence, becomes our lodestar in times of darkness, a compass that perpetually reorients us toward what's truly important, toward being men and women of exemplary substance. You see, when your sense of identity stems from your steadfast values and principles rather than your status or possessions, no conflict or bad actor can destabilize you. Your integrity remains unassailable, a kind of spiritual wealth. No injustice or ransacking can ever devalue or confiscate. From this place of practiced nobility, even the most abhorrent circumstances cannot degrade you. You transcend disempowerment and victimhood by staying anchored in your own rock-solid ethic, your actions becoming a light in the bleakest night. This is why the Stoics revered cultivating greatness of soul above all other pursuits, for it's the one imperishable aspect of our humanity that can not only survive darkness, but jar us awake with its radiant truth and transform whole societies from the inside out. So as our world lurches from crisis to crisis, let's reorient ourselves toward this timeless calling, not toward chasing worldly striving, but courageously mining the depths of our own character, alchemizing the lead of our flaws into philosophic gold. This path isn't marked by ego's craving for glory, but by the soulful heroism of becoming people of exceptional honor, resilience, and love. People radiating the true greatness which casts light into our world's blinding nights. What could be more worthy of our undivided effort? Lesson 9. Use reason to cut through emotion. Use reason to cut through the noise of emotion. When we start to see things clearly, we realize they are not as bad as they first appeared. Stoicism values rational thinking over reactive emotions. In the fog of war, our perceptions get distorted. The slightest sounds and shadows take on terrifying forms in our mind's eye. Our frantic thoughts catastrophize even small setbacks into existential dooms. We get blinded by the smoke of fear and anger swirling through our hearts. It's in these disorienting times that the Stoics urge us to cling to our reason like a solitary lifeline, to pause, dig deep, and force our rational faculties to penetrate the murky clouds of distorted thinking and unproductive feeling. You see, much of our suffering in the face of adversity stems not from objective reality, but from the subjective nightmares we've created about that reality. As Marcus Aurelius put it, things themselves don't hurt or get reviled. It's the views we take of things that do. Think of how warped our perspective can become under intense stress and uncertainty. A troop movement is misconstrued as a full-scale invasion. A temporary shortage is perceived as apocalyptic famine. A heated disagreement gets labeled as irreparable hatred. But when we pause and insist on viewing circumstances through our highest reasoning faculties, the distortion falls away. We see events dispassionately for what they are, not as our anxious minds have mutated them into emotional IEDs. Certainly, reason alone cannot wish away the realities of injury, injustice, or violence. But it can debunk many of our panicked assumptions that mire us in fear and rage, and it can focus our perception on wise, strategic responses, rather than spinning wildly into the emotional quicksand of hysteria or vengeance. The Stoics taught that rationality is the great moderating force, a heat sink for our overheated impulses, and a spotlight cutting through the terrifying shadows cast by our worst imaginations. So when the world once again feels like it's descending into darkness, let's pause, take a calming breath, and consciously hand the reins of perception over to our reason, to extinguish the small flames of catastrophe before they become raging emotional wildfires, robbing us of our lucidity and agency. For it is only through the light of our rationality that we can cut through the smoke and fog of adversity and navigate toward the wisest course of action, no longer driven by distorted feeling, but guided by a clear-eyed mastery of our highest human faculties. Lesson 10. Embrace adversity. Heroes are only born in adversity. A crisis is the ultimate test of life. The Stoics saw adversity not as a curse, but as an opportunity to reveal one's true strength. It's easy, when times are tranquil and resources plentiful, to float complacently along on the calm waters of life, to delude ourselves into believing we've attained some heightened form of virtue simply by coasting. But the Stoics knew this false sense of mastery is shattered the moment sincere difficulty enters the picture. It's only against the grueling resistance of a fierce opposing force that our true character is finally forged and revealed. Think of how steel is hardened in scorching heat, or how muscles only grow stronger through the trauma of being torn and repaired. In each case, it's the overwhelming adversity that unlocks the hidden reserves of resilience and power. That's why the ancient philosophers saw crisis as a gift, life's ultimate spiritual gym where our deepest priorities and capabilities are finally stress-tested. Do we rise heroically to the occasion, or shrink into cowardice and bad faith? As Epictetus put it, what would have become of Hercules if there had been no lion, hydra, or criminals to rid the world of? He would have just rolled over and gone back to sleep. It's the mythology of the hero's journey itself. First, you must brave the demons before accessing the enlightened power at your core. So when the storms of crisis eventually batter against our lives, we have a sacred choice. We can bemoan our circumstances and play the victim, hopelessly beaten down by each new wave. Or we can lock eyes with the chaos, roots planted firmly in our deepest Stoic principles, and rise with a primal scream to meet each difficulty head-on. Because whether that difficulty manifests through combat, injustice, violence, plague, or disaster, it is ultimately an initiation into a deeper, more uncompromised plane of human existence. An opportunity to finally give birth to our most heroic selves, not in spite of suffering, but because of our willingness to suffer beautifully for what we hold most sacred. The Stoics challenge us to be spiritual alchemists in this regard, to invite in the adversity, feel it scorch through us, and be transformed through its intensity into people of diamond grit character. Let each crisis become an rending shed of the old fearful self, as we rise like chiseled monuments embodying all that is bravest, wisest, most just in the human spirit. Only those who embrace rather than flee this spiritual fire baptism can emerge tempered for true greatness. They are the ones made deserving of the mantle of hero. Will you join their ranks? Conclusion. In the face of war, chaos, and adversity, it's easy to feel hopeless, powerless, like the darkness might swallow us whole. But the timeless teachings of Stoicism offer a different path, one of inner strength, resilience, and an unshakable peace that transcends external circumstances. By taking full command of our thoughts and actions, developing profound self-knowledge, and accepting what we cannot control, we reclaim our sovereignty. We refuse to be merely unthinking victims of fate. When we cultivate the humble valor of moderation and discipline our minds, we forge an unbreakable poise. Adversity's anvil cannot shatter souls fortified by rigorous self-mastery, and by seeking the light of opportunity within every darkness, rooting our worth in a greatness of character rather than ephemera, and clinging to reason over distorted emotion, we ultimately alchemize crisis into an initiation into heroic living. The tried and true wisdom of Stoicism provides both shelter from the storm and the strength to transform that storm's violent winds into the very forces refining us into our highest, most virtuous selves. So as the world churns through its eternal cycles of conflict, upheaval, and renewal, take the timeless insights of the ancient Stoic thinkers as your lodestar. Embody their resilience, their rationality, their unshakable commitment to the path of right action. Though the nights may seem interminable, you now wield the light to blaze a trail toward the dawn of a refounded life, one of deeper purpose, virtue, and an inner citadel that no darkness can overrun. Stay stoic, friends, and may that unwavering philosophy be your compass through every tempest you weather, for it illuminates the path to realizing our fullest human potential, even when the very world seems bent on our undoing.